What's something you can swear you saw but no one is believing you? Kept telling my mom and sister I was seeing UFOs. Kept happening really regularly and frequently. Eventually I got them all to come outside because it was about time for one to show up. And it did. It was a stealth bomber being test flown, long before the public announcement about them went out or any pics were leaked. Blew all of our minds. 6 years ago I went through 10 surgeries for a badly broken leg. During one of the surgeries early on, I have distinct memories of waking up and hearing, seeing and smelling several minutes of the surgery. I also remember a nurse looking me in the eye and then telling someone I was awake. I then passed back out, presumably due to more anesthesia. No one believes me that this happened. I'm now terribly afraid of surgery and hope I never have to enter another operating room. When I was living with my parents, our small dog jumped straight up onto the kitchen counter. It was super high, but he made it. He only did it once and I witnessed it, but my family calls BS every time I say it really happened. I dated a guy in high school whose whole family swore they saw their dog levitate. I met the dog, his name was Dingo, and I never did see him levitate. Myself from several feet away. I was very tired and I was walking up the steps at my house. I remember watching myself from an angle that wouldn't have been possible. But I remember it clear as day. You accidentally entered third-person mode, nothing weird there. Yeah, just push P and the cam goes back to FPS with HUD disabled. For how long do I have to push my P? On the bike path a man riding a beach cruiser one-handed, no shirt but wearing a huge sombrero, carrying a fawn cradled in his other arm. You saw what Santa is like during the summer. Trust me on this one. When we were 10 years old, all of my cousins and siblings were playing hide and seek in the dark in the middle of a park. When someone gets found, you join the seeker to look for people, but you can't tell them where they are. I was the seeker and I had just found one of my cousins, so we were walking around and looking for the rest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone that looked exactly like my brother run past us at inhuman speed. I turned to look at my cousin and he had admitted that he saw the same thing. We found my brother later in the round, but he was at the other side of the park. Nobody believes either of us, but both of us still remember it. I saw my uncle fall from the roof as he was escaping a house fire. He was able to get inside the car and take off, but not before the house toppled over on top of the car. After a few minutes he appeared out of the smoke, limping away. I distinctly remember running back to my house, right next door, to tell my mom about what had just happened. We go outside and nothing. No fire, no smashed car, no house falling over. I don't know WTF. 5-year-old me was smoking, but I had the hardest time processing what had just happened or not happened. My mom was so angry with me for coming up with such an awful lie about her little brother. Till this day, 27 years old now, I can't explain what, why, or how I saw what I saw, but I very much remember terrifying feeling I felt during and afterwards. Mom thinks I must have fallen asleep playing outside and woke up from a nightmare and panicked, but whatever it was, it felt too real. I saw a dude standing next to my truck with an unnaturally wide smile. I was on Highway 49 East right outside Greenwood, Mississippi. I heard hail hit my truck a few times, so I pulled over expecting a tornado. I was grabbing my backpack getting ready to bail out for the ditch. I turned back to the driver's side window to check my mirror and this guy was just standing there. Smiling. It scared me so bad I just slammed the truck in drive and got out of there. A few years back I saw a capybara in my front yard, in Alabama. No one believed me because by the time I came back with my phone he was gone. The best I got was I guess it might have been a capybara after a local man was found to have his own exotic animal collection less than 3 miles away. Other animals I saw in that yard, an emu and 2 bison. I must have lived pretty close to that dude's land. Added to add, it was def a capybara. I watched it for several minutes and estimated its weight somewhere around 100 to 130 pounds. Dude also had a panther escape in the area, which brought in state wildlife officials. Once while in a drained pool, I heard a droning sound. It kept getting louder and louder, when a massive cloud of bees slowly flew overhead and into the distance. That's a swarm. When the colony gets too big for its hive, it starts making a new queen. Then half the bees leave with the old queen, what you saw, to find another place to live. Cool experience. Once saw a welder in a bar who did not brag about being a welder or tell anyone they were a welder. No one believes me. My betta fish disappeared out of a covered tank. And then reappeared in front of my eyes. If you can imagine, this tank is clear plastic on all sides, including the bottom. There's nowhere to hide when it's empty. The only thing not transparent is the metal lid. Betta fish are known to hide, so I didn't worry about not seeing him for a couple days, but on day 3 I got worried, so I took the heater and filter out. Checked the inside of the filter. Took the plants out. Took the hides out. No fish. Nothing in the tank but water and glass rocks now, so I started scooping the rocks out, thinking he may have gotten trapped under there and died. Pretty soon I'm staring at a tank with nothing but water in it. No fish. I figure there's no way he's still alive, so I start scooping the water out. It's about 3/4 full when suddenly my fish does one of those fishy slow turns in the dead center of the tank. There he was. It wasn't like I turned away and then back and my fish was there. No, I was staring at the tank, and I quite literally saw him swim back into existence. 1 second he wasn't there, the next he was. I moved him to a smaller bowl for a few days to keep an eye on him. Covered the top with perforated plastic wrap to ensure no jumping. He disappeared from the bowl a couple days later and never came back. Have owned several betta fish, and I can honestly say no other fish has ever dimension hopped out of a tank since. A few months ago, I was at work. I worked opening shift, 4:30 a.m., that morning, and one of my co-workers was late. I heard the door open and I saw a shadow walk towards the door to the back. It stays locked to keep customers out, so I opened it, but no one was there. I figured he just went to the bathroom. Like 20 minutes later, I go to my manager. Me, hey, I think employee took off. I saw them earlier but they never came in. Manager, employee is in North Carolina taking care of his family. Me. I have clear and distinct memories from when I was still in diapers and a crib. No one in my family believed me until I described the exact layout of my room at the time, bed and dressers included. We don't have any photos of this room, so this isn't a false memory situation like my brother said. I even described a time my mom gave me cough medicine in a Mickey Mouse spoon from before I could even talk. It's weird because my short-term memory is trash, but my long-term memory is absolutely unreal. When I was a kid, between the ages of 4 and 8, I would see a guy in my house. He would stand in the same spot in the same room looking at me, and my family couldn't see him. I'd cry and scream and would refuse to go near him, but nobody else ever saw him. I'm someone who believes in logic and the laws of the universe, so this really throws me off. I struggle to believe it myself, but I vividly remember this person, this ghost if you wish. Even now, I remember his face. I explained this to someone the other day and I felt so silly, I sounded like I was making it up. Not something I saw, something I felt and heard. I was struggling to sleep one night, lying in bed feeling wired and irritable when I felt pressure lift from the bed on my partner's side. I assumed he'd got up to go to the bathroom. I was facing the opposite way so I didn't see him do this. A few minutes go by and I hear him come back into the room and feel him get back in bed. Nothing strange about that. Lying there still frustrated, the same thing happens again. A lift of pressure, some rustling sounds like a person trying to navigate a dark room. An absence of sound for a few moments and then the sensation of weight on the bed again. Still not thinking much of it, because it wasn't an obvious cause for concern, I continue trying to fall asleep. Then it happens again. And again. And again. I wasn't too into the idea of asking him if he was okay as we had a ridiculous argument that night and I was pretty pissed off with him, so I just ignored it. But then it sounded like he had got up and was simply pacing around the room clumsily. I could hear things on the shelves being touched and slightly moved and hands gently brushing against walls. And then I felt the bed suddenly dip in a concentrated spot of the mattress as though he had stood on it. This carries on for I don't know how long, rustling, pressure on the bed and so on until I snap. I sit bolt upright, turn around and say, "What the hell are you doing?" To see my partner waking up from a very deep sleep and looking confused. I told him what had happened and he said he'd been asleep next to me the whole time, which was pretty obvious to see him in his very sleepy state. Plus he would have had mere seconds to jump into bed without me noticing in the time it took me to sit up and turn around. I somehow fell asleep that night feeling confused and as though eyes were on me. And in a typical cheesy haunted house fashion, I get a call from my mom the next morning telling me my uncle had died the night before. A purple horse. Middle of day, no drinking or drugs involved. In retrospect it was probably wearing those pajama things some horses have, but that horse was purple. Was playing with my cousin and a friend of ours outside. We were riding our bikes and had a bunch of fun, but couldn't explore that far from where I live since we were like 7 or 8 years old. As we were cheerfully cycling down a long road behind a parking garage near my apartment, I started to slow down as I was getting tired of it. Both of them were continuing to cycle down the road as they haven't noticed me being left behind yet. You have to understand that the location of the road was right in between the parking garage, with 2 floors, and a fence which has only rails on the other side and was usually deserted. So once I stopped cycling, I could only turn tail or follow the road ahead. After reaching my limit, I simply stopped my bike midway after a while and tried to catch some breath. While doing so something caught my eye on the backstairs of the parking garage. I tried to get closer to check out what it was out of curiosity. But boy was that a mistake. I spotted a man who seemed kneel down behind a wall of the backstairs. Didn't seem suspicious at first, however after a closer look I saw what seemed like knife covered in blood. My body froze and all I could feel was fear that went through my body, which felt like it lasted for minutes. The man just started to catch on with me standing on road and began to slowly stand up and face my direction. I was somehow able to get my brain back to process and bolted down the street with any power I had left in me. After passing both my cousin and friend, as well as leaving a big distance to where I spotted him, I started to break down in tears and explaining what happened. No one would believe me, since they went back to check and found nothing strange. Got so traumatized from it, that I avoided the road until my mid-teens. TLDR, saw a man with a knife covered in blood behind a parking garage while cycling his kid and no one would believe. He was just putting jam on his toast. I have never mentioned this before to anyone. Scene, Epcot in Orlando, on the brick walkway between a walk-through part with stores and such on either side and the part leading up to the land. Date, June 2008. I was with my pregnant wife. Huge storm rolls in, black clouds, about to pour, when there was this unearthly deafening sound and bright light exploded. I opened my eyes and I was standing 30 feet or more away back under the covered walkway, unharmed. My wife said I had been standing right beside her, then I wasn't. It was too far to have run in the brief second of the explosion, I assume a lightning strike. Swear this happened as well as I could tell it. One night I saw 3 bats flying above my head in the sky and the middle one was 20 times bigger than the regular bats. I was at my boyfriend's house. We woke up and I made us bagels and cream cheese. I put mine in the toaster and walked his over to him. When I came back the toaster was propped up on its side stacked on something else. I certainly didn't do it nor did I bump it as I walked away. When I left it was sitting flat on the counter toasting my bagel. I have no explanation for how it happened as he was in the backyard. In summer camp as a kid I went to the bathroom late at night. To get there, you had to go up this big hill covered with rocks almost like a gravel driveway. So I go up there and first thing I see on the floor is a giant smooshed piece of poop with a human footprint in the middle, toes and all. I couldn't stop laughing as I went to the bathroom and went back to the cabin. None of the other kids believed me when I told them, and it was gone the next day. Lamau. Ball lightning. There was a glowing white ball in the sky, like nothing I've ever seen. It flew around, maneuvered a bit. I turned my head to reach for my camera. When I looked back, it immediately went behind a cloud and disappeared. There was no lightning that day. The weather was rather fair and nice. It lasted for about a minute. Was really interesting. When I was a kid I ate some of my grandmother's heart medication and nearly died. Was rushed to the hospital to have my stomach pumped and I have a memory of looking down at myself on the hospital bed with my mom and hospital staff around me. It still is one of the only things I've had happen that I cannot explain and no one I've told this story to believes me at all. Even my super religious aunt said it was my imagination. Something that sure looked like a UFO. I'm pretty sure it was probably just a spotlight from the ground moving across the clouds, but even when I describe it that way people think I'm just imagining things. I also have no clue where a spotlight would have been in that part of town, so that complicates things. Carry lube just in case. The other day my husband and I were pumping gas at a random store. One SUV pulls up and one man gets out and walks off with a backpack, then the other man gets out and walks the opposite way with a backpack. They just pulled up and left. We literally watched them walk in 2 directions. Next thing we know, the car is gone. Just gone. Weird, right? But then it happened again. But with different people on a different side of town with backpacks too. We googled all kinds of shit that day and thought maybe we both just made it up? No idea. I live in Kenosha, Wisconsin in between Milwaukee and Chicago, and have seen a mountain lion twice in the area. Everyone just stares at me when I tell them lol. Also I've seen a BMW with the turn signal on but only once. Where? When I was a kid I remember seeing a lady's face in a doorway grinning at me, with what I assumed to be something brown covering her entire face and teeth. I would see her several times until we moved away when I was 5. Obviously my family didn't see her but my mom got worried when I told her that I saw the lady from the kiosk. Which is what I called the lady after I dreamt of her falling down a flight of stairs in a small store not far from our house. And I shit you not, my mom told me a few months ago that in the same store I was dreaming of, a woman had fallen down a flight of stairs and had her face torn on the way down. Apparently being covered in dried blood when she was found, hence my description of her. Imagine the look on my face when I heard that lamau. Also, apparently I kept talking to my mom about a man in the wall back then. I don't remember seeing a man in the wall but I do remember talking about him. Edit, realize that the title says but no one believes you, shit. My mom believes me because she's had experiences like this with both my older brother and younger sister. Oh well. I was 10 and in the car with my mom. I looked out the window, passenger side, and the lady next to us looked back at me. Her face was distorted. I was mortified. I turned to my mom to tell her and when we both looked, the lady was just smiling. I remember her so clearly and her little blue car. What if you just looked at her in mid-sneeze? I have very vivid memories of my great-grandfather. I distinctly remember which room he lay in for months while being cared for by his family and what the layout of the room was like. I also have a memory of playing with him and him talking to me while I was being fully aware that he had cancer in the latest stages and understood that he would probably die soon. Thing is I only ever met him once in person and I was only 4 months old. My family has pointed out that I knew facts about his appearance that I could not possibly have known because there are close to no pictures of him. like a big scar he had across his chest from an operation. I have no other memories from my early childhood. In fact, my memory about that time is so bad I don't even correctly recall things from my time in kindergarten. Not me but my mum. She swears a mattress with someone sitting on top drove past her on the other side of the motorway. She was mid-50s at the time and still swears this happened. Hey, this is an actual thing people do up north. We hook an old mattress up to a skidoo, truck or quad and drive around. It's like tobogganing behind a truck but more comfortable. When I was 12, I stayed with my great-aunt while my mother and brother ran to the grocery to get lunch stuff. She took me into her basement and introduced me to her husband. Her long-dead husband. Whose remains were in a Ziploc in a file drawer, neatly filed. She made a big deal about how she bought a brand new box of Ziplocs for him instead of reusing one. She was all about the frugality, my great-aunt. No one believed me until after she died. When my mother and aunt found the cremains in the Ziploc in the file drawer. In November of 2012, the day before the world was supposed to end, my buddy and I went up to the store to grab drinks. We no joke saw a full-size airplane so low to ground we couldn't believe it. It was hovering above a street line and wasn't moving. Even weirder was when we got to the store, as soon as we entered, every single person we could see all turned their heads and started right at us, like we weren't supposed to be there. They stopped shortly after, but damn was it the weirdest thing ever. Of course no one believes us. I'm the only one in my family who doesn't switch their knife from one hand to another to cut their food. I swear I learned to eat like that because my dad did too. My entire family says that's not true, he never has. It drives me insane. According to the Europeans, you're eating the right way. No need to change utensils from one hand to another when eating food. I think I had a collision problem once. Was about to take a shower and stuck my arm in to feel the water. But the water just didn't connect. It went right through my arm, no temperature or splashing or anything. Here's the weird shit. I wasn't by myself. I called my wife in and she watched the same thing happen. Her arm acted normally, got wet and warm. Kept putting my arm in the stream and it didn't interact with the water at all, was like it wasn't there. We tried water from the sink, and that was fine, I could touch that. I poked a bunch of other random shit too, no changes. Wife put her arm beneath mine and said she could feel the water hitting her arm, like mine wasn't even there. Then at one point I stuck my arm in and it was just fixed. Everything worked normally. We hadn't changed anything. My wife hates talking about it because people always grill her with questions and explanations. When I was in kindergarten, I could have swore I saw my teacher at the time put her hands inside her pants, rub her vagina and then smell it, in front of all of us. It's the most bizarre memory because I can still see her doing it. But why would that happen? So many questions. I was chilling in the kitchen at around 11 p.m. when suddenly, two small mice ran to the middle of the floor and started wrestling or playing, and then wrestled out the front door. I've never wanted pet mice so badly before. Like and comment for longer videos.